Okay, do you have any questions about Kathakali at this point? Does it raise any questions in your mind? Marika is there. The reason I ask you this is that I think that you need to begin thinking of what the differences and similarities are between Kathakali and Kudiyatam. Because I'm likely to ask that question somewhere. And also in connection with when you're dealing with no, I'll probably ask the same sort of thing with connection between no and kabuki. So the idea is that in these two cultures, you've got some similarity of how these art forms grew up and how they developed and how that might, how one might have affected the other, and in some cases how the other might have actually gone back and affected the original art form. Besides the fact that having all of these other art forms in Kerala, from which Kudiyatam, or to which Kudiyatam has some similarities. So there are those matters to be considered too. One of the things that drew me to this partially was because there are a lot of, actually there are a lot of books on Kathakali. This happens to be one written by an Englishman. And you don't have access to it, and I don't think it's in the library, but it essentially gives you a summary of all of the plays in the Kathakali repertoire. And it gives them in detail so that each one gets a particular chapter and focuses on the content and the use of makeup and costumes by individuals in these art forms, and the connection between the epics and the Kathakali plays. So it really does a range of interesting things. And the guy is published this in England. It's David Boland, B-O-L-L-A-N-D, and David Boland was I believe he worked as a British individual in charge of a tea plantation. He didn't have anything to do with Kathakali per se until he finally saw it. And then he fell in love with it. And that's what caused him to do this book. And he also did a short film on Kathakali, which is only in 16 millimeter as far as I know. But it takes you into the dressing rooms and into the, so it's the earliest of the films that I could find about Kathakali. And I used it for a long time in classes in Michigan State and in Stony Brook. What is interesting about it is that it has it's sort of in two parts. The first part is about the training, and the second part is about the performance of this one piece, which is principally it has a progression in terms of its dramatic action, so that by the end of the piece, you're seeing one of the characters disembowel the other. And this is graphically shown on stage. So it's rather rich for watching something like this. It's rather rich to see just how the Kathakali performers pull that off. Zarrilli makes a great many points about Kathakali that I want to point out a few things to pay attention to. Certainly the history of Kathakali is there, although he doesn't dwell on it. In fact, as you can tell from practically everything that you've been informed up until now, we haven't been dealing much with the history of these two art forms. And that's principally because I think this is not the kind of class you want to spend that much time on them, because this is a kind of overview of these art forms and not an in-depth study of them. But there are books that probe and go deep into the nature of the plays in Kathakali and the way the Sanskrit plays have been used in Kudiyattam. So there's a great deal of that that one could probe. It also should come as probably no surprise that the 17th century is when Kathakali was born and developed, and that's what century in connection with Western theater. The end of Shakespeare's reign in English theater at that time. And also we find that's also true of kabuki. So when Shakespeare and his theater was towards the end of their life in the early part of the 17th century, this is when these art forms, Kathakali and kabuki, were popular among the middle class. And also they were very different from what was happening in the kind of classical milieu of No and Kudiyattam, both of which were for what Brandon describes as the elite. And so what we have are interesting similarities. Kathakali pulled from a lot of different things to compose its techniques. As it is true that kabuki does very much the same thing. It pulls from traditions, acting traditions, it pulls from makeup, it pulls from dance, and creates its own world for the audience. And these things became terribly popular. So in fact, I think it's not surprising that Spotify has a rather unusually large amount of material on kabuki and Kathakali, so that you get the sense that these are important art forms for someone. The other thing, another thing that I think one ought to consider is the training process and what we find as similarities and differences between the training process of Kudiyattam and that of kabuki. There are the similarities in part are the oil massage, the exercise routine, that sort of thing, which you've seen. And how they differ in part is that what the Kathakali people are trying to do is to get the actor to be able to be flexible enough to dance all night, essentially because the performances go on all night. Kudiyattam performances only at the very end, tail end, when they do the whole piece, either the act or the play. That's the only time that they go into the wee hours of the morning. And it also depends on when the temple opens. The temple opening, that is when the gods are allowed out, is 3 o'clock in the morning. And so normally Kudiyattam has to be finished before 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not an all-night affair going till 6. Kathakali typically goes till 6 in the morning if it's an all-night performance, because it's not associated with temples as such. It's not a temple-based art, even though it's frequently performed in temples or near temples. And that's in part because of the patronage. That is, Kathakali troops are encouraged to go and perform where there are large numbers of people who have spent, through their organizations, have decided, oh, we've got to have a performance of a Kathakali to celebrate whatever the function is that they have near the temple. A lot of these temples, incidentally, this is parenthetical, a lot of these temples have houses that they've constructed. Some are near the temple, which are for marriages, which can be rented out for marriages. Similar to what we have in this country, the place where I work in New Jersey, there's a great big complex, and they're building a new wing of that complex for marriages and marriage celebrations. So it's similar to what they do in India. They get these events going, and it makes them some money. In any case, the thing about Kathakali is also that it's so popular in part in the West. So that's why we had a group of Kathakali performers come here and perform at the Fine Arts Center at one point in time, and also come here and do exercise and work with our students. And this is not only once, but twice we've had this happen here. So, and it also happened at Stony Brook, it happened in Michigan State, and it usually happens in the large universities across the country where they have some interest in South Asian or East Asian studies, that they bring in something popular like this. Anyway, so the training of Kathakali has some similarities of the training in Kudiyattam. The one significant thing is the Kathakali performers are like, in one respect, are like the Kudiyattam performers in that they memorize the whole play. The actor has to know the whole play, not just his part, and in this case, in Kathakali, it's all men that are in these plays, except for the one total company that is made up of women. It's the only one I know of in Kerala, but it has all women playing all the roles. But you don't have a mix of women and men playing in the same performance of any one Kathakali play. And Zurili has carefully outlined what the selection process is for choosing performers to work and study Kathakali. There are a large number of students who want to be Kathakali performers, and when you look at the videos that are available about training, you'll see a number of students, far more than there are in a Kudiyattam classroom. And as I said, in Kudiyattam, I was one of 4 people in the classroom. That's true and no, that you have your teacher, and that person is the one person. You may sit and watch a no play, but you study with that one teacher. And similar in what we have with opera, where your teacher, the vocal teacher, works with you and kind of raises you through the ranks of the opera training centers. In this case, in Kathakali, it depends on whether you're in the north, as Zurili points out, whether you're studying the north Kathakali or the southern style. There are 2 styles in Kerala. One is the northern style and the southern style. And in the northern style, it is associated with the Kerala Kalamandalam. The southern style is associated with the companies in and around Trivandrum, which is the capital city of the state of Kerala. And for all practical purposes, when you see a Kathakali performance, you can't pick out who is a northern style and who's a southern style player. But there are subtle differences in terms of gestures, in terms of the way they use their body in space and their facial expressions. So there's very much a difference there. And these courses for training are based on, well, sorry, let me go back. The choice of the performer coming into the Kathakali training center. It starts with a notion of what's the body of the actor coming in. We don't make that distinction here, do we? I don't think so. We mostly allow anyone who wants to be an actor to train. That doesn't mean that they're going to end up being an actor, but they would train to be an actor. Many of those kids that come into Kathakali do not live at home. They're like you all. They're away from home studying, and they, in fact, rarely go home. Only on special occasions are they allowed to go home from the schools. And essentially, if they're living at the Kerala Kalamandalam, for example, I may have told you this story, but I asked one of the young kids that was studying Kathakali, well, how do you help your teacher out? And he said, well, whenever he wants something, and it's always a guy that's teaching them, whenever he wants something, he gives us a little money and sends us down to the local tea stalls to buy some tea or to get cigarettes or to buy whatever he wants to eat. And the student brings it back to him. And I said, well, anything else? He said, yes, we have to sleep across the doorway into his dwelling to keep the demons away at night. So they sleep outdoors at night across the doorway of these little houses where they put the teachers. And the kids are scared. They always are shaking when they talk about this, because this is an area of Kerala and of India where witchcraft is practiced. And in fact, just down the road from where I lived at the time when I was working at the Kerala Kalamandalam, there was a lot of people who don't have proper housing create little palm leaf huts for themselves against the walls of the compounds near the road. And so one night, we hired a cook, and we went out of town, went to Bombay for a while and came back to Kerala, and were told by the cook that they'd had a terrible thing happen, that a man, it was raining and it was night, and he was in his little hut with his wife, and he heard a voice calling him outside, and he went outside and he was killed. So all of this happened just like 50 feet away from our house. So this was one of those occasions where they thought it was definitely witchcraft. There could have been nobody around to kill him. He had to have been bewitched. And just across the river, north of the Kerala Kalamandalam, it's thought as being a hotbed of this sort of thing happening. So it's kind of an interesting sort of, you look around and at night it does seem a little scary because there's not a lot of lights, lighting the way for people to walk down roads and stuff. And at early morning hours, for example, if you go to the Kerala Kalamandalam from your dwelling at 3 in the morning, this is very dark and there's nobody out on the roads. So you get a little scared. In any case, the way the kids study, it's basically they commit themselves to work with that teacher as long as the teacher will keep them. And in the Kerala Kalamandalam, they go through stages in which they work with various teachers at various levels till they become senior students. And one of the videos I may show you is about that subject of working with an older and more seasoned teacher. I like what Zirilli has done on page 323, where he's given you a breakdown of what happens to the student for the first year, second, third, and then the advanced students, and also postgraduate students. Part of the reason they can do this is that the Kerala Kalamandalam, mostly the state government and the federal government, pay for the tuition for the students to study. All of those kids have scholarships, essentially. So they don't have to pay a penny out of their own resources or their family's resources. And many of them come from poorer families and can't afford to go to study. So this is an advantage. And at the Kerala Kalamandalam, maybe 10 years after I left there, they instituted a system in which they required the Kalamandalam to teach the kids, at least through high school, to all of the curriculum that is appropriate for schools in Kerala. So they had to have at least a high school education while they were at the Kalamandalam. So they had to include that among all of the other things that they were teaching in terms of performance. Okay, page 324 shows you the this Kalamandalam Gopi, who is doing a mudra and also a facial expression. This is the lion, I think it's lion, yes. Tiger, sorry, he's a tiger. I have a video to show you of him doing these facial expressions now, so that you can just see how different he looks. He was very young at the time when this picture was taken, and now he's up there in age. He's a senior master of Kathakali. But you learn virtually the same thing that you learn in Kudyatam, the use of gesture language, facial expression, eye movements, upper body use of hands and arms, etc. It's from the waist down that things begin to change, because you are essentially doing all sorts of physical dance movements, which require a lot of stamina to be able to do. And that's why they put them through this grueling training during the monsoon season, so that they actually build the stamina to be able to perform in these overnight performances. The Kathakali, if anything is different from Kudyatam, it's the Kathakali plays. Because I think you can, when you look at the play that you've got, Kalyani Saugandika, you can see that in that play you have two characters who are performing on the stage. In Kudyatam, you normally don't get more than one character performing on the stage till the very end of the sequence of things of the story. So that means it could go on maybe 10, 12 days before you actually see two people performing together. Whereas in Kathakali, invariably, you have a main character and then you have subsidiary characters interrelating with the main character. And the other thing is that the sound of the drums and the tension that's caused by the performers in doing the sorts of things that they're required to do as their character is much more intense in Kathakali. And also the costume itself is big from the waist, that big skirt that hangs out, which incidentally, the idea behind the skirt came apparently from a king who devised the idea that Kerala itself was thought of to have been born out of the waves hitting the shore of the Arabian Sea, hitting the shore of Kerala. And therefore the costume is thought of being like waves that have been created for the actor to wear. Also, you have bells small little bells on the Kathakali artist's legs, just below the knee. And they're a padded piece that's tied around the back of the leg. And so it causes a sound to be made whenever the actor stamps on the stage. Okay, and the other thing is the type of approach to the characters is very strong. I think we saw a performance of Sharpana Ankam, in which the female character has her breasts and ears and nose cut off, right? I think we showed that to you at some point. I'm gonna just try to find that on this piece here. And I'm going to take us into a screen share. All right. Okay, so I'm taking you to this because this is titled Ramayanam Kathakali, and it is the section where the blood, Ninam, is used by the character. And the beginning of this is all about the introduction of the female character who is a demoness who eventually takes the shape of a beautiful woman and tries to seduce Rama to leave his wife and join her. This is the beginning of that piece. Sri Ramachandra, so that's the story. Typical of Kathakali is the sloka, which introduces the events that are going to take place. So what they're doing is singing that shloka, the two singers. You don't have anything like this in Kudiyattam. You do have this in Krishnattam, this kind of use of shlokas and padas. And also you see how many people are there. There are people all around. Okay, this is the entrance of that character. And the actor is doing a curtain, what's called a curtain look. This is teasing the audience to want to see what this character looks like. So this is the demoness Shopanaka. And now the face changes. He gets on a stool, so he looks taller and bigger. Remember, audiences would normally be sitting on the floor looking up at this. This means excitement or blessing, that, etc. Like all demonic characters, she thinks of herself as being pretty swell. And so consequently, she's doing gestures that indicate how powerful and how wonderful she is. Another thing to be aware of is that the gestures in Kathakali are not exactly like they are in Kudiyata. Many of them are, but a lot of them are not. And you'll notice how the finish of the gesture happens on the sound of the drums. So it's very precise. It's almost, I would say it seems quite different from the way the drums accompany the actors in Kudiyata. It's, very precise, all that sort of punctuated at the very end, at the very beginning. That's the gesture for husband that she was doing. Meditation. Okay, well, this could go on and on. And I'll just take you a little further in. Her body, she has to change her body in order to seduce Rama, that one person. That's the word for body. She's got to deal with her hair. She can't continue to look like the way she looks right now. She has to change her hair. She's going to have to tie it up in a knot. And her face, she's going to change her face. Oh my heavens, look at this, it's ugly. I can't go visiting him looking like this. I have to dress differently. She's getting a lech for Rama. She's starting to get hot and bothered about him. Kama, the god of love, has shot his arrows into her. Oh, it's causing her great anxiety. She puts her finger in her mouth to say, oh, what can I do? Okay, and she's going to turn and leave the stage. And then in the next scene with Rama, she's going to reveal herself. And that's her on the right, having changed from a demoness to a beautiful woman. Sita's on the left, Rama is sitting.
Harley, was there any costume indication that that's the same character?
Well, actually, it's a different actor.
Well, I know it is, but is there any clue to the other than knowing the story?
As far as I know, there isn't in this costume. I can't tell that it would. It's just she is wearing the costume of the beautiful woman. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And that's what she's decided to do, is to appear before Rama in the guise of a beautiful woman. So she's a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
That's what she is. And Rama is not fooled, because what woman would be wandering around in the forest no woman would be alone wandering around in the forest. And so consequently, it must be somebody that's probably a demoness. Okay, so anyway, that's one of the particular things that you have theatrically. You have this acting out of the story. So in Kathakali, you do have those special moments, like at the beginning when she's demonstrating her ugly features, and then suddenly we move to a scene in which she appears as a beautiful woman. Audiences would know this instantly. Yeah, the thing about it is that all of these are stories that the audience would know. You know, we of course are coming to this without necessarily knowing this matter. I'm going to switch over to another kind of stylized piece. This is in the court that demons are holding forth. And I'm going to take you a little further in, if I can find it. This is the fight scene that's coming up between a demon and a good guy. These fights are very stylized. They never really do hit each other. And the character at the left is going to destroy the character at the right. he actually puts substance on his face to suggest blood. And in this production, which is interesting, the demon comes out towards the audience members. This is very unusual. Somebody in the audience wants to sit close to the stage, so they had to lay the mat down. He's going to disembowel the character and pull out his entrails. Okay.
So who's the demon here?
Yes, who is the demon?
You said the one that he killed is the demon,
Yes.
and not the. Okay.
That, because he became so enraged by the actions of the demon
Mhm.
that he totally lost his cool and changed into this character. Ultimately, of course, there's the appearance of a god who restores him to his order, and he falls with his hands down and falls in front of the god to assure him that he's now back to normal. But it's during this moment of time that we have this sort of wild experience.
Was he eating the entrails of the demon?
Yep, that's what he was doing.
Oof.
He was imitating this. Incidentally, you know that during Elizabethan England, the time of Elizabeth, that I think Guy Fawkes, who
Yeah.
was disemboweled and his alive, and his bowels were then thrown into the fire. His heart was ripped out and thrown into the crowd. So we have some good examples of how this happened in the West in real time. Okay. Let's see. Well, anyway, so what I was trying to get to basically is that that in these Kathakali plays are these moments, these really theatrical moments, which are worthy of watching simply because they're so shocking. You know, that's what they're trying to do. And mostly these things happen in the early hours of the morning. They don't happen early in the piece. They happen much later on. And this is in order to keep the crowd waiting for this moment to happen. And usually about the time of maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, the audience wakes up when they hear all this noise, and then they begin to watch again what's going on. But many people fall asleep during the show, just as Zerelli has pointed out. Kind of common, you fall asleep during the show. And these are held, it's hard to describe exactly what it's like, but it's not like a theater. It's sort of like an open air raised platform space where a lot of performances take place, and people come and go at will. They can go home, they can have dinner, they can come back and see what's left of the show, or they can leave, or they can fall asleep there, or their kids fall asleep there. And essentially the whole idea here is that it's very loose. It's not like our theaters, you know, where you walk in and you don't dare make a noise when you're leaving, shutting the door loudly or something. They don't care about that, you know. They even talk with a regular voice or even loudly when things are going on because it's so noisy nobody else can hear. So towards the back of the audience area, there's a lot of carrying on that goes on. People smoking, people chewing betel nut, people drinking tea. I've done that more than once myself. And it's simply because this is the way you think about going to these performances, is they're events. And sometimes you're drawn back in because this event sounds like it's getting interesting for you to watch. So you want to be there on time to watch the thing that's going on. Any questions about any of that? So the plays, the Kathakali plays are built around the notion of some of these kinds of moments happening with special kinds of characters. The play Nala Charitam, this is a 4-night performance. Nala Charitam is a 4-night play. And this piece opens with King Nala in his garden. And he wants and desires a wife, and he doesn't have a wife. And so he sees a swan flying, and the swan lands near him, and he approaches the swan and captures the swan. Okay, so the character that's playing the swan has to have a sort of beak thing. And what does Nala want? Fly to this woman and see if she would be interested in me. So you serve as an intermediary. So the swan is kind of, oh yeah, okay, I can do that for you. So, and ultimately does agree to go and goes to Damayanti, who is the woman that he has a desire for, and meets her in the garden. And then the next scene, of course, is her and her maidservants in the garden. And the swan comes in and comes sort of sassily going up to her and saying, oh, I've got something amusing to tell you about. And she says, you know, what is that? What do you know? And then he begins to relay the fact that there's someone interested in you. So the story goes on from there, and there are different segments in which finally Nala, the chief character, King Nala, ends up having changed his shape in the last act and last play so that she can't recognize him. And ultimately he has to make a miraculous change to his true self at the end, and then the two lovers are united. Very popular piece, one of the most beautifully written. Most people who talk about Kathakali talk about that play as being the most ideal play that's ever been written in Kathakali form. In any case, so these plays offer a wonderful world of possibilities for performers. It's true that Kudiyattam has its own kind of world of possibilities, but it's a much delicate, more refined, more contained, not as verbose as Kathakali is. The main problem is, I've asked the students several times, well, did you ever want to study Kathakali? And they'd say, oh, no, we've never studied Kathakali. It's too crude. Or the Kathakali people, would you ever study Kudiyattam? No, it's too intelligent, too much intelligence required. Because you don't understand the Sanskrit. The Kathakali plays are Sanskritic plays, where the Kudiyattam, the Kathakali plays are not Sanskritic. The Kathakali plays are based on the epics and consequently in Malayalam, although they do have Sanskrit that appears theatrically throughout a Kathakali play, but not altogether. All right, so like Kudiyattam, there is a similarity between the costumes worn by the characters so that the costumes designate who the character might be. And the makeup especially those characters that have the little knob on the nose and on the between their eyes, those little pith knobs symbolize the fact that they are demons. So anybody that's got a pith nose and a pith little thing between their eyebrows is bound to be a demon. It can't be something else. And the green pacha faces are those of the heroic characters, the good guys. The minaku, or the shiny, as it's sometimes described, female makeup and costume looks more like natural street makeup for a woman. And those are definitely women's, that's the women's face. Although there are Brahmins who are saints who have these crowns and hair wrapped in knots, and they have that same sort of shiny face as well. So it looks more like a real person. Actors mostly do their makeup except for what's called the chutti. And in Zirili, it's called C-U-T-T-I, and that's a frame of, it almost looks like a beard, and it's built out from the face, and it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to actually put on. And in the old days, it was done with a special kind of layering, almost like cake icing. If you see the, and back and forth and back and forth, and it didn't come out very far on the face. Today, they've made these chuttis very big, so that if you see a Kathakali, and you've seen a number of the chuttis in the videos we've seen, some of them have different parts of the face emphasized with the chuti, but the heroic characters only have this part, basically, around the jawline, etc., to the ear area. Yes.
Is Chuti spelled Chuthi?
It can be, but it's Zerilli says Cutti,
Okay.
but it sounds like chuti, Chuti. Okay. And so green, the knife still exists in Kathakali just as it does in Kudyatam, the knife-like makeup. I am not clear whether Kathakali has brought changes in Kudyatam makeup or whether the Kathakali artists just simply borrowed from the Kudyatam artists the makeup. It's a little unclear. And then there are different categories of bearded characters. Tati, T-A-T-I is the beard part, and there's a Velatati, there's a Chukana Tati, red beard, and there's a black beard, Karuta Tati. And all of these things have, according to Zerilli, have a more refined or less refined, so that the more refined characters are those with the green makeup. And next to them are the female characters with the Minaku, and Brahmins. And then we get the sort of mixed, arrogant characters like the knife character that has the kind of knife-like shape above the mouth. And then the bearded characters range from a white to a red, and then finally to a black. The black bearded characters are the lowest on the totem pole. They tend to be, black is normally associated with the forest creatures or forest animals. Now, whether it's true or not, there are a number of tribes. You know, India has something like 40 tribes of people who settled in the jungle areas. So all over India, you come across tribals, similar to what we have with the Native Americans. You have these tribals in India who are mostly associated with the forest. And many of those individuals are dark-skinned, especially those in the south. So it may be that these makeups were based on something that had to do with the way people thought of these individuals and categorized them as cruder, and those that were green makeup were more perfect. One thing that always stands out is that the character Krishna, who is a god, Krishna has a blue makeup, and that blue is symbolic of black. So Lord Krishna himself is supposed to be a dark-skinned individual or character. And in North India, you find the depiction of Krishna in paintings as blue. So anytime you see a painting of an individual in North Indian miniature painting especially, blue characters are actually probably Krishna. Okay, so Zerilli also talks about the properties that are used in the Kathakali, and they're virtually the same things that they use in Kudyatam. There's no place to put drums upstage in Kathakali. The drummers are arranged stage right and in full view so they can see the actors across the stage. The singers are upstage left and look down at the performers, and also the shruti player, S-R-U-T-I. And the shruti is that sound that you hear constantly, drone sound. The drone is what keeps the actors and the singers on pitch. And you heard a lot of that in both of these performances. And then you get the chenta, the stick drum, for big moments like these fight scenes. That plays a big part of them, as well as the mudlam, M-A-D-D-A-L-A-M. Mudlam is the instrument that's around the waist of the drummer, and played with both hands. And little things like the mace. You saw the mace that the character was carrying, that he strikes the demon with in that last scene that you just saw. And then you also find bow and arrow. They never actually do any kind of shooting of a bow and arrow on stage, but it has certain appearances of that. And often in Kudiatam, same props, same kind of props in Kudiatam as are in Kathakali. And the stage conventions, Zirili points out, are determined by wherever they happen to be performing, but you always have to have the bell metal oil lamp at the center downstage and for performances. And usually the wicks that are lighted are much bigger than the wicks that are lighted in Kudiatam. Kudiatam, the wicks are relatively small. In Kathakali, these are big wicks. And usually what you find is one wick is facing the audience and two wicks are facing the stage, right and left of the, so that the actor would get more of the light. Because in the old days, that was the only source of illumination. So it's still used as a symbolic representation of the way this art form is to be depicted. And the right hand for the use of the, is it right hand or left hand? Which did you find for the silver nails? I think maybe it's the left hand. We'll think about that. Find out for me. Silver nails, which hand? Incidentally, I had a set of silver nails. These are actually real silver that had to be made by a local silversmith in India. But when I did a production in Chicago, they were stolen. Somebody thought, oh, nice, let me take these. So they took them out of our dressing room. Okay, so, but principally the thing to be watching for in Kathakali is the physical movement on stage. Lots of physical movement by the actors and characters. Okay, sorry?
I looked it up. It's the left hand for the silver nails.
Left hand, okay. Yeah, I had a feeling I was wrong. It's the left hand that's needed the nails. And why, I don't know. I don't think they were able to tell me. They just use them as sort of an attention-grabbing feature. And it's hard, you know, to keep them on because they've got a little thing that, and you have to have your fingers measured whenever you buy these silver nails and have them made. You can't just walk into a market and find 5 silver nails hanging out. No, you have to have them made for you specially. So the actors would all have them made. Okay, just one, okay. I just want to show a little bit more of something here. And that is the training, just to emphasize the notion that, oh, okay, hello. Oh, we have to do the, have to get rid of that. Okay. This is clearly the senior students at the Kerala Kalamandalam. Typically, the teacher is sitting at a table, beating out the time. And they're doing the gesture for lotus. the guy on the left is a well-known performer of female roles. The students are doing representations of the male character. But notice the feet, how the sides of the feet, they stand on the sides of the feet, not on the flat foot, but on the side. And they're doing this sort of movement of the foot to suggest female. So the teacher is giving them a lot to look at to see what they should be doing with their bodies and face. This is flower. And the thing that comes out of the flower, touching it. So this kind of stance is common in Kathakali. You don't find this in Kudiyatta. This means similar to. This is word. This is beautiful. And this head positioning is common in Kathakali, not used in Kudiyatta. So the contrast, I think, between these very fast-moving, action-packed scenes and these very slow, deliberate scenes is very much built into these Kathakali plays. They actually go to see these events because they want to see X actor perform that. So you actually go to see the actor that you are interested in watching that person perform. And sometimes they don't even look at the stage, but I see many audience members with their eyes closed just listening to the music. So it's very much common in Kathakali circles to be involved in listening to the music, especially because it's so compelling. Okay, and its time is nearly up. All right, we'll shut this store down. Okay, any questions? All right. Get your thinking caps on. I'm getting ready to start planning the exam next week. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Maybe we'll talk a little about it on Thursday, but we'll try to pull everything together on Thursday. And come with some questions if you have questions about particularly these individual art forms. All right. Thank you and good night.
Nice day.